morning, everybody, and welcome to another cute session, Champions Using Teams Effectively, with Ricardo and Stacy, and I think Nash is going to join us here in a few minutes as well. So glad to have everyone join us live this morning, or if you're watching on demand. And so we're here for you. I don't know if anybody came with some questions today that they want to either come off the mic or put in the chat. We always got stuff to talk about as well. And then I think Stacy actually had a follow-up from last week, maybe. You want to talk about that?
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I wanted to address an open question that I had from Jim around forms and private chat. So I went ahead and opened up my demo tenant here. Let me go ahead and share that screen and I'll show you pretty quickly, Jim. I think you're on the right track with what you discussed with me around using private group chat with some folks to kind of form that community that you were looking to form. And for those of you who weren't in the conversation, we did some training, I guess the middle of this week, where we really talked about Teams meetings and trainers using Teams meetings. And we took folks through all the different features that can be leveraged from a training standpoint with apps. We demoed forms, we talked about breakout rooms. But one of the things that came up with forms and the discussion of getting, a feel from folks is that there was an interest in creating a private group. So I have this private group here with Johanna and Nestor and my demo tenant in Teams, of course, in chat. And in this private group, if I wanted to issue a poll to Johanna and Nestor, there's the best way to do that is not to add forms as an app up here by clicking on the plus. In fact, if you do, you'll see by default, it's not even one of the Microsoft apps that's available to you. Instead, if I wanted to issue a poll to Johanna and Nestor about, let's say, where are we going to go to lunch today? Or something like that, I would start that from this bottom area and lean into these tools that are available to help me customize messages. And you can see that forms is there, it's enabled for me. So when I click forms, it's going to give me the ability to build out that poll that then Nestor and Johanna can respond to.
So Stacy, is the forms presence as an icon down in that bottom
in the tray?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, in the tray. Is that contingent upon it having already been loaded as an app in your Teams tenant?
If you have forms in other context in Teams, you should have it there as well. Okay. Are you saying you don't see it there?
No, it is there, but it's the only app that's there. And I was wondering, maybe we're also having issues with Whiteboard and follow up to that training as well, and trying to make a whiteboard accessible to that group.
Okay. Let's see. There are some limitations to Whiteboard still in the GCC. It could be, let me just launch this really quickly and then we'll move on to talk about Whiteboard. So when I send this, it lands in the chat. Johanna and Nestor will get a chat notification and they'll see immediately. They can submit their vote and then we'd all have this information flowed right into the chat, which I think is what you might have been trying to do, Jim, when you were looking to kind of get an idea of what brought folks into the chat or what interested them in participating. So this would be the way to do that. Yep. Okay. Now for Whiteboard.
Can I just say real quick?
Yeah, please.
Just on that forms piece, just to kind of take that example further. I mean, it's a lunch question for two people, in this example, but right. Why, if you're out there saying, why would I use this in a chat? Obviously imagine a chat with more people, let's say 20 people, and you're trying to get some feedback in a nice aggregated way. Also, I think the value here is, whatever the question would be for, let's say, 20 people, it's also a convenience in that instead of asking the 20 people in my chat to type in, some answer to my question, it's very convenient to kind of pre-do the answers. All I got to do is click a couple buttons to give my input. So, in a chat where maybe not everyone is very chatty or comfortable, this is an easy way to get some engagement, because it's so easy for the responders to just click a button versus, you're trying to get some conversation going and people have to write sentences and whatnot. So just think about that value too. Sometimes a poll like this is my question, worthy of me putting a poll together, and just think about on their side, the convenience and value you're bringing by turning your statement into a poll that they can just click on versus a text question that they have to respond to in text. It's almost like if I could make a post where somebody could just hit like and I can get their answer. That's just super convenient for them. I'm probably going to get more response from my chat members than if I tried to make them type sentences. So
yeah, great point. Now, you asked about Whiteboard, and I'm running up against a boundary here as well, and I'm wondering if it's just because Whiteboard and GCC is tailored to being part of the meetings context, and then of course shared via OneDrive. You could pin a website tab and bring in a whiteboard that way in this particular context for a private group chat.
Okay, let me think.
Are we saying we're expecting to see whiteboard here in private chat? Is that the thought?
Well, I think that's the desire, right, Jim?
Yeah.
I wanted to at least provide them accessibility. I knew it wasn't going to be the same thing as a meeting where people are able to pick up the pen and start writing. So I was hoping to be able to somehow share it to the group, since a private group chat does not have a distribution list that's external to the group. And there are 35 people in this group now, which was pretty amazing in and of itself.
Yeah,
I had to go in and start to share the whiteboard to people. And I don't even know if that worked successfully, because there wasn't a whole lot of input in the whiteboard. What people were doing is, as they added people to the private group, they were also forwarding their link to the whiteboard, which was not going to work because it was unique to the individual.
Right.
But the other issue with the whiteboard is, and again, it might be because it was a recurring meeting, but prior to the meeting I was having Wednesday evening, I had created a whiteboard because I wanted it to be more than just, start from scratch in the context of the meeting. I wanted to kind of capture the flow of what we were going to be doing in that meeting. I expected when I clicked on share the whiteboard that it would have pulled that instance of the whiteboard because it was created in the meeting. It didn't. It opened a brand new one. And every time thereafter that I clicked on it, it opened another instance of a whiteboard attached to that meeting. But I could never go back and find one that had been created previously.
So it was a recurring meeting where you were trying to pre-populate the whiteboard for the next meeting?
Yes.
Right? Okay.
Yep. I actually had opened up the instance of the meeting, created the whiteboard, closed the meeting, and then edited it in the whiteboard app through OneDrive.
Okay.
And when you say created the meeting, you opened the meeting, you like hit share and got the
Yes
whiteboard started. Okay. Because I'm wondering if so from my perspective, the current release of Whiteboard at GCC is very specific to two scenarios: the in-meeting sharing, and the web experience. And so while I'm sure there's plenty more integrations to come, anything outside of those two core functionalities, I wouldn't, be surprised not to see. And in the case of what you're describing, I'm wondering if starting at the web experience might be the best approach, because you can certainly create a new whiteboard there that isn't necessarily tied to a meeting per se. That the share button is there to share with individuals. It'd be nice to just hit a button and share with the 35 people in your chat, but I don't know if we're there yet. But if you may be managing a whiteboard that you're pre-creating for a meeting, maybe the web experience is the place to start versus the share button of a meeting.
So how do I?
So like if you're here in a brand new whiteboard and then that share, the add people button there, just like the just like a OneDrive file would let you share that whiteboard out, to whoever. So yeah, so if you go hit that blue button there on the right. Nope, go back to the whiteboard.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah, and
you were talking to me.
Yeah, the blue button on the far right.
This one.
Right. Yep. Just like a OneDrive, just like a file, share, you're sending that link to whoever, and that should at least let people get in. So I guess I'm thinking it's not ready for prime time, maybe for the scenarios you're looking at. But in the meantime, while we wait for additional integrations, the web might be the better place to start versus the share button.
I'm just tinkering now.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, I guess I was trying to make it, and I was in the moment, and because it wasn't doing what I was expecting, I was reacting to that. So I did attempt to share the screen, but even though that meeting or that whiteboard had been created in the meeting, would the participants in the meeting automatically have access to it, or would I have had to add them to that group?
A whiteboard shared during a meeting, I believe that should give the permissions to the people in the meeting, assuming they're in your org.
Right, same as like recordings, right?
Right.
It's gonna have that list that you give it of people who should have access, just through the nature of creating the invite, I think.
Okay.
And FYI, Stacy, that tab you created for the whiteboard, I think that would have worked if you're in a desktop client. The web version of Teams, the website tab sometimes gives that behavior that you just experienced.
Okay, so the website tab should work beautifully if I had my VM stood up instead of just using the browser.
Yeah, maybe I can show that here. This is
since I created a share link for that and used that, that I think would take care of the permissions even in the group chat where Jim wouldn't necessarily have to keep track. Can you do it in a chat instead?
Oh, just like a website tab in the chat?
Yeah, yeah, just to tinker with the same stuff I was tinkering with. Aha, much more promising.
And then in the chat, it's been added there. Somebody they should be able to just click. In fact, is this Deborah? I think this is my friends, Deborah and Nestor. So if Deborah, where is Deborah or Nestor? If they go take a look at this.
Yeah, this will be the key.
So there's that chat.
Let's see if they have edit capabilities.
And they're in the browser too, and it still seems to work. Yeah. So yeah, Deborah's in the browser. I'm actually surprised that that worked for Deborah in the browser, but that whiteboard tab is working for her with edit capabilities.
But that was, I mean, you fully shared it just by creating a share link, meaning you could send that anywhere, and people who have that link should be able to do that. So
Right.
I'm not necessarily surprised. I'm encouraged though. And Jim, this is the way. It doesn't sound like you have the website tab enabled at your agency, but if you did, that would be the way to bring Whiteboard into your private group chat without having to manage all the permissions. You would have to create that generic share link and then paste that link in the Whiteboard tab.
This is similar workaround to when we were back a couple years ago when we were waiting for the OneNote tab to officially come. The website tab saved the day back then for kind of the same kind of thing.
So the generic share link was, I guess I looked away for a second and,
no, that's okay.
Missed something critical.
No, that's quite all right. So yeah, instead of typing names, maybe go back a step, Ricardo.
Mm-hmm.
So you would click the share like you did yesterday, but instead of typing in names, just click the copy link button at the bottom, right there where Ricardo is. Okay. And that gives you a generic link, and that's designed so that anyone who you share that link to will have access to the whiteboard. And what that does is it gives you that URL that you need to put in a website tab so that everybody who has access to that chat can edit.
Okay. Now, is that link different than the one that would be when I'm in the OneDrive whiteboard folder and click on that instance and go up to the top and click copy link? Is that the same? Or
let's go there so we can confirm.
So in theory, you're saying like this guy here, for instance?
Yeah, just select it and then the copy link up on the top. So put the
so copy link is like a non-sharing, but that's a I'm not going to modify anything related to sharing on this item. I'm just going to give you the URL as a convenience is what copy link usually is, or files or anything. Sharing is I'm going to give you a link and I'm going to adjust the permissions based on what you choose here. So, if you choose blah, 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 it's going to be this link, so copy link doesn't make any changes, but shared potentially does, unless you were to choose, for instance, people with existing access. That's the one thing I think in this list that, wouldn't make any changes. It's based on what it is. So yes, if you were dependent on copy link, that's really, to me, it's a convenience button. I'll give you the link to this asset as is, versus share is I will help you change permissions to give a working link to whoever it is you want to give it to. Did I overcomplicate that answer? So what we did here in this guy is use a share button, which is going to adjust permissions, which would definitely be different from a copy link button, but should be similar, I would think, to the share button here. So in theory, this share is doing the same thing as that share. Does that make sense?
It did to me.
Okay.
That's perfect.
Good. Much more now than it did before.
Yeah. Awesome.
Yeah. The key is that as people join your private group chat, as people express interest in your community and join, you would want them to have that access to the whiteboard there. So is a website tab available to you, Jim?
I believe it is. I use it in Teams all the time. I didn't check in there, but I'm almost positive it is.
Yeah. I would think so too.
Cool. Awesome. And then I see a question from Lisa about also about forms, new features in forms. I'll actually grab this link for the sake of the sharing. So it looks like she's looking at this article here about new intelligence and insight features for forms. Adding response times and insights and things like that. So between the three of us, my first thought to this question is I always assume the fancy features. I know we got Forms and Forms Pro, not totally sure where the lines get drawn, but usually when I see fancy Forms features, I assume they're going into the Pro version, and at least from a GCC perspective, might not necessarily be part of the generic forms. But I don't know.
Forms Pro, I don't think exists anymore. I think that's now Dynamics Customer Voice. It's a Dynamics module, so that it's a lot clearer that, hey, this isn't part of Forms. It's now a Dynamics feature.
All right.
Okay.
I'm even farther behind than I thought.
Well, we don't live in the Dynamics world all that often, so it was really easy when that just kind of got quiet in the M365 world to not know. But they talk about it all the time on the Dynamics side of the house.
Mm-hmm. So Lisa, I think your question is, will these hit the GCC? So this is an April article here. Yeah, and if they haven't hit by now, maybe I wonder if they got rolled into that Dynamics aspect of things.
I'm looking through the roadmap for forms just to see, and I do not see a call out for insights features for the GCC.
Interesting.
But I do see that Whiteboard for Windows 10 is on the roadmap for September.
Oh, wow. I didn't know that.
So that's exciting news.
Is there an entry for iOS and Android as well? I thought those were going to kind of all come together.
There is. I saw it this morning. Android, I think, says launched now, but iOS is still pending. 1 second. Let me tweak my search here on the roadmap.
I'm also going to need an update from my fancy new Surface Duo. So somebody needs to work on that one too.
Yep. Oh, actually, I misspoke. Okay, so Whiteboard on Android is GCC in September. Whiteboard on iOS is GCC in September. And like I already mentioned, Whiteboard for Windows 10 is GCC in September. So it looks like they're going to hit all of those next month, which will be quite exciting.
Be an interesting month. So Lisa, I don't think we have a good answer for you for the forms thing per se.
Oh, nope, that works. We can pass it along. So, and we did have a county inquire about the dynamic customer voice about purchasing that on their own. And so I know that's in discussion too about whether that's even doable.
Oh, okay. Right. We got a couple more minutes here. If there are any thoughts or questions.
Jim, I'm excited that your community has grown already.
That was my win for Wednesday.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's,
very exciting.
I don't think it will be long before they transition it to a team.
Right. Yeah, I think that's a natural progression as your group grows, and You would want to have more capabilities. Makes sense to move it to a team at that point.
I think that was the greatest frustration as I was seeing the team grow. I wanted to have that level of interactivity, so to seize the moment kind of thing that prompted them to get there, and to capture the reason why and what the expectation was around that. And not being able to get the tools that I would have had in a Teams environment to the private group chat seamlessly just was, one of those moments.
Right. Well, hopefully we cracked a little bit of those blockers that you were having for interacting with that group in the private chat. So, yeah, go forth and pin your whiteboard that you want to use with them, and definitely issue that poll that you wanted to do.
I did do that. I actually put the instructions in on how to do it as the poll, so hopefully people will be able to kind of get that. But I'm in here trying to copy the link, and because there's no name on the line of the two, name or group, it's giving me an error message, and I don't think it's letting me copy the link. Of course, I have the whiteboard open. Does that matter?
So you're saying you're like in here and looking at the whiteboard, hitting this.
Yes.
And no name, but you're not getting the copy link here.
Well, it's there, but normally it gives you an indication that it's copied. It didn't. It immediately went to the please enter a name or an email address.
And you have people in your org. You have this option, not the specific people option, right?
That might be the reason why.
Yeah.
Link. That did it.
Great.
Beautiful.
Yes. Choosing specific people and then not giving a person is kind of cruel to the tool. I think that's why it was complaining.
I don't know that cruel would have been the word I used, but I can see your point. You've taken empathy to a new level.
Right.
That's awesome. Well,
so one last thing I wanted to say about Whiteboard is, that we are expecting a refresh of the UI at some point. And I don't know if that's necessarily a thing on the roadmap yet, but it's good to hear we're moving right along with the app integrations and things like that. But yeah, if you check, blog posts about Whiteboard, you'll see the fancy, marketing related to the new UI. So, because I know, Jim, you had mentioned a question about, shapes or something, and, things you were expecting the shapes to do. I expect those things to get better with the new UI interface, perhaps. So I don't know when, but, the look and feel we've got today with Whiteboard, should get a facelift here at some point.
Well, and I think some of that, Jim, will get addressed right away when you have the Windows 10 app, at least, because all of the templates and stuff are already in that experience. And it'll just be the web and Teams integrated place where that's the roadmap item for this fall.
Yeah, you mentioned templates. That's also on the roadmap with a GCC tag for September. So it's going to hit, all of those areas. Perfect. I'm glad to see it officially on the roadmap. Spelled out with GCC tags, right? Right, Nash? Yay!
I'm excited.
Awesome.
Me too.
Yeah, that's actually a major differentiator because the inability, as a trainer, you need to be prepared, and you want to be able to create the activity or the exercise for the engagement and not build it on the fly, because there's too many other things vying for your attention. So that'll be phenomenal.
Love it.
Awesome. We're glad everybody could join us today. Hope it was helpful, and it's like we'll see y'all next week.
And maybe there'll be more, because I did put this into that private group of the 35 people, so hopefully they'll begin to be able to put it on their calendar.
Nice.
Great. Love to have it.
Thank you. Thank you much.
All right. Have a good one.
Bye.
Bye now.